welcome back to my channel. I hope you enjoyed your weekend and are having a good week so far. Today we are talking about a case that has really had my attention for a few weeks now, ever since I heard about it, and there is a lot of twists and turns, and unfortunately with this case it is unsolved. If you are not already, please make sure that you do subscribe so that you never miss a future case. Have you ever been on a cruise? And if so, then you know how relaxing it is and just a way to really escape reality for the week or 2 long vacation. Well, imagine being on a cruise with your family and enjoying your vacation, and then everything takes a turn for the bad unexpectedly. That is what happened with the family that we are talking about today. 23-year-old Amy Bradley lived with her mother and father, Iva and Ronald, and her little brother, Brad, in Chesterfield, Virginia. They were all getting ready to go on a cruise, and March 21st of 1998, Erin, who was Amy's best friend, was going to stay at the Bradleys' house while they were on the cruise so that she could take care of the pets and just keep the house together. She said growing up, she was always the 5th person to the family and felt very close. She stated that it was always fun with them and their house was always full of laughter. Erin described Amy's and her brother Brad's relationship as very close. She said they were so close that it made you really just want a close family as well. And I feel like that speaks volume on just how great this family was and the bond that they all had. And actually, Erin said that Brad was her boyfriend around this time as well. Not that it's important, but I just figured I'd throw it in there. It was interesting. Amy had just gotten a new apartment and a new dog. And I did read that she also just graduated college around this time as well. So this trip was sort of like this family trip to celebrate her achievements, to go and get ready for the next adult steps in her life. Erin went shopping with Amy and helped her pack for the trip, and she said that Amy seemed very excited to go on this trip, and honestly, they all were. They were excited to get away from home for a little bit and enjoy some much-needed family time together. Erin watched them pull out of the driveway and never knew that her life was about to drastically change after that. Amy's dad, Ron, said that him and his wife both worked as insurance agents with Illinois Mutual Insurance Company, and they would run yearly contests, and this specific year, they were rewarded with the cruise. They originally thought that the company would only cover just the 2 of them to go, but was extremely happy to find out that Amy and Brad could come along with them as well. One night on the cruise, they all went for dinner. Amy's brother actually stated that the waiter who served their table that night was being very flirtatious with Amy. They all made a joke and said that if anyone needed anything, just tell Amy, and then when she lets him know, he'll get it right away. After dinner, they went back to their room to change their clothes and went up to the pool deck because the pool party started at 10 and it seemed like everyone was going to be there. After being there for a little bit, Amy's parents were starting to get really tired. They decided to let Brad and Amy know that they were going back upstairs to just lay down and call it a night. Her mother said she told Amy she loved her, and Amy told her, "I love you too, Mom. I'll see you in the morning." Amy and Brad went to the disco dance because that was really the last part that was open around this time. They were having a few drinks and listening to music and just having a good time together, so they really were not ready to go back up to their room yet. Brad was walking out of the club and he motioned up to Amy, who was in the upper level where the DJ booth area was. There was a round table with about 6 people or so sitting there, so they just motioned to each other that he was going out to the upper deck. He said that he was there for about 30 minutes before returning back to the room around 3:35 a.m. Around 5 minutes later, Amy came back in the room and they both just sat on the balcony finishing their drinks and just talking. She brought up someone that she had been dancing with and talking to made some physical move on her. She didn't get too in-depth on it. She didn't think that it was that big of a deal, so she kind of just shrugged it off and just told Brad about it. When Brad went in to lay down, she stated that she didn't feel too good and wanted to sit out there to get some fresh air. He told her he loved her and that he would see her tomorrow, and then he shut the door behind him and went to bed. When her father woke up around 5:30 in the morning, he did see that Brad was still sleeping inside, and he seen that Amy was sitting on the lounge chair on the balcony. So at this point, he laid back down and went back to sleep. But then around 6 in the morning, he woke up, and he did not see her out there anymore. He noticed that the balcony door was open a little bit, and her cigarettes were not out there. The shirt that she had on that night which was a yellow polo shirt, was lying on the chair in the room. He didn't think too hard on it. He thought, maybe she changed her clothes and left to get a cup of coffee or something. They were just out drinking the night before, so it's not uncommon for people to want coffee the next morning. He left the room, and after a while of not being able to find Amy is when he went back to the room to wake her mother and Brad up to tell them that he cannot find her. At this point, they were in Curacao, and the ship was getting close to docking. It was brought to the manager's attention that Amy was missing. And before we get deep into this, I do want to tell you that the way that the cruise staff handled this was very poor, in my opinion. They asked the ship to put out a voice page, and he explained to them that they would not do that at 7 in the morning because not bothering the rest of the guests was more important than finding a missing woman. I get not wanting to bother the guests at 7 in the morning if it's something silly. This is something that is serious. We're in the middle of an ocean. Things happen on cruise ships, which we all know that. He told them to keep looking, and if they can't find her within half an hour, to come back and he will get the security officer for them. I'm sorry. Did they not just tell you that they've already looked pretty much everywhere they could? Everyone was getting ready to get off the ship, and finally they ended up paging for Amy to contact the front desk. At this point, Amy's family was begging and pleading with the staff to not let anyone off of the boat until they found Amy. They still unfortunately made the clearance announcement. This will piss you off because they showed little to no sympathy for Amy and her family. They told Amy's mom that they were not going to stop everyone's cruise because there was a missing girl. He referred to this as one of the family's unfortunate incidents, and that there was 2,400 other people who paid a lot of money for this trip. Mind-blowing. Me personally, I would not have been upset to have to wait a little longer while a family tries to find their missing loved one. Amy's family felt crushed, obviously. They said that they watched everybody go about their day, laughing, talking, and just having fun. And there they were looking for Amy, which was described as a complete nightmare. It was around 9 in the morning, which was now 3 whole hours that she has been missing. The staff finally, at this point, decided to do a search of the ship, which they called a Charlie drill, where they would check every drawer, closet, and room in that ship, and it usually takes about 45 minutes to an hour, and there's typically around 800 to 900 people involved in the search. Now again, if they would have just not let anyone off the ship and they could have did the search then, I feel like it could have been a lot easier and they would have had a better chance. Every crew member had their own section to check. After the search, the captain came to their door and they said that they searched the entire cruise and Amy was not on this boat. No evidence, nothing. So it was like she just completely disappeared. The employees were thinking that she either jumped off or fell overboard. They contacted the chief of police and they started a search. There was multiple boats and helicopters out looking. The Coast Guard actually said it was like the biggest search they've ever had. So that said, if she would have fallen or jumped overboard, they would have had a body at least because the current was so strong that it would have washed her onto shore. And they even said that if there was maybe a shark attack or anything like that, it would not have eaten her completely. So they were supposed to at least find an arm or a leg or something. So at this point, it was getting very, very strange. On March 24th of 1998, Erin, who is Amy's best friend, who again is at home, received a phone call, and on the other side of the phone, there were 3 people crying uncontrollably. She said it was pain that she's never heard before. Her best friend was missing and nowhere to be found. The cruise just continued to operate as normal even while Amy was missing. And at this point, this news had made it back to the U.S. Loved ones seen it on the news and didn't want to believe that she was really missing. People were just talking to her, she was having fun on this vacation, and all of a sudden they're getting the news that their loved one is missing. It is now March 26th, which is now 2 full days that Amy was missing. At this point, the St. Thomas FBI field office heard about it and they wanted to get involved and help. They went to go check the room for evidence, and just when you think the cruise staff cannot get any worse, they cleaned the entire room. So basically, if there was any evidence at all, guess what? It was completely gone. It was wiped. They tried to get fingerprints or fibers from the sheets, but again, where was the evidence? It was all cleaned by this point. So they had nothing to go off of right there. They said while on the balcony, the rail is pretty high. The detective is over 6 feet tall, and the rail came up to, like the upper part of his body. So to me, it seems very unlikely that she would just fall over. The detectives then went and talked to Amy's family to get more of an idea of the timeline, and also, obviously, they had to rule them out. The detectives went to look at security cameras, which, surprise, surprise, there really wasn't much because there was only cameras in the main areas of the ship. And the man that was next door to them would sit on the balcony and kind of lean over to talk to Amy. Amy's mom, at this point, now that Amy was missing, had thought that was a little odd and wanted to bring it to the FBI's attention. The day after she disappeared, they heard loud music coming from his room and then heard him talking over the music. They thought that this was very odd because he was this cruise alone. So with this information, the FBI went and searched his room. But to be clear, he is still considered innocent because they could not find anything tying him to the disappearance. So now they were back to square one, trying to figure out, what exactly happened. They ended up putting little flyers on doors with Amy's pictures and just letting people know that she was missing. One man remembered her face and described her as the life of the party. He was actually putting together a video for work, which is why he was on the cruise. So he had to record a lot of the dancing and the stuff going on that night. He went back and was looking through all of his footage and found that Amy was dancing with the bass player who played out on the pool deck. They called him Yellow. There was actually multiple videos of him and Amy dancing together, so this really stood out to him. And remember when Amy made that comment about the person who made that physical move on her? He got a call from head of security on the cruise, and they asked him to hand over his tapes. He told them, absolutely not. I'm not handing over my tapes to you guys when, for one, you're not real police officers, you're just security. And for two, you've done nothing to help find this missing woman. So what he did is he went and he gave it over to the FBI agents who were trying to solve this case. Another woman that was on the cruise said that she had recalled seeing Amy dancing that night and actually had a little conversation with her as well. She said around 5 or 6 in the morning, her and her friend were on the top deck and remembered seeing Amy in Yellow on the glass elevator. Not only did she see both Amy and Yellow get off of the top elevator floor, but she also seen Yellow walking back without her, which obviously, thinking back, is very weird to them. Again, her dad woke up around 5:30 in the morning and she was still on the balcony. But then when he went back to sleep and woke up around 6 in the morning, she was nowhere to be found. The timeline that this woman is giving and then the timeline that her dad is giving is matching up pretty close. And to me, it's screaming Yellow. That's just my opinion. So obviously this Yellow dude was the main suspect at this point. And of course, like they always do, he denied having anything to do with her disappearance. Ultimately, he was not arrested because they unfortunately did not have any concrete evidence, and the local police department was not really working with them either. The FBI agents most definitely wanted to arrest him at this point, and they kind of figured that he was the reason that she did disappear. And it was even said that he was pretty bothered by what was going on. So was he bothered because he had a part in her disappearance, or was he bothered because he had nothing to do with it and he was concerned? Is the real question here. The cruise was now coming to an end, which was very scary because they were about to lose access to any witnesses or suspects and the potential crime scene. Without a body, you really can't determine what happened. Different scenarios like, did she jump overboard? Did she fall off? Did she get smuggled off the ship? It's all a mystery to everyone at this point. Amy's family had a close friend that had told them that it would be easier for them to fly home from Puerto Rico instead of getting back on the ship. So on the 27th, they flew out to go back home. They described this as an awful feeling, knowing that they were leaving her behind and she was supposed to be with them. When they left their house, she was with them, and now they're going back to their home and she's no longer there. Her brother said that if she was lost or being held captive or just anything like that, it just felt like flying home was them giving up on her. When they got home, they had family waiting to comfort them during this time. They started a command center to reach out to every authority they could think of. They had hotlines and contacting the media. They really tried their hardest to get Amy found safely. During this, there was a man who seen her picture on the news, and he remembered seeing her when he was on his vacation about 4 months after Amy and her family went on their cruise. So this just brought a lot more questions. He explained that he went on the vacation with a friend for a diving trip, and they went to a few different places, but overall the place that really stuck with them the most was Puerto Marie, Curacao. It was set up more for locals, so you really had to know where this area was. He said that you'd be lucky to even see maybe like half a dozen people there, so obviously not a very popular place. They had just came out of the water and they were washing their equipment off, and he looked down the beach and he seen 3 people walking towards them. There was one guy, a girl in the middle, and then another guy on the side. The 2 guys, I think, at this point I got a little confused. I think the 2 guys had walked into a store or something, and then she started walking towards the divers, the 2 men that were on the vacation, and she was about to say something until one of the guys had came back over and then just stared at him. Did not say a word, but motioned her away from him. And he said this stuck with him because it was very sketchy. About 2.5 weeks after Amy went missing, her family then went back to do a press conference. They just couldn't stop thinking about her and this whole disappearance. They felt like they really needed to do something. This was very hard for them. They had a reward for $250,000, and it just truly broke my heart hearing their cries when they talked about how they couldn't sleep or eat or really do anything knowing that Amy was gone. But as a parent, how could you? You went on this family vacation and now your child just vanished. After the press conference, there was a man who approached them, and his name was Deshi, who was a taxi driver, and in his hand was Amy's missing persons flyer. And he said, "Are you the father of Amy?" And he said, "Yes, he is." He then pulled him to the side and said, "I want you to know that your daughter did not fall from the ship. She did not jump from the ship. Your daughter was not thrown from the ship. She is on this island, and I hope you can find her." This statement from the taxi driver just sent chills through my body. He said his heart started beating very hard. The taxi driver said that she had approached his taxi and seemed very frantic. He said she was wearing a white top with jeans, and going back, this was what she was wearing underneath that yellow polo shirt that was lying on the chair in the room and the jeans that were missing. He said that she told him she needed to use a phone and that he pointed in the direction of the phones, and he said Amy just walked off the complete opposite way. So in my opinion, was she wanting to use his phone so the people who smuggled her wouldn't know, or was that a cry for help? And I bet now looking back, he probably really feels horrible knowing that he was face to face with her and she's still missing right now. It was the family's first real indication that she was still alive and out there. They were told they needed to go to a place called Coral Cliffs, which was a resort, another place called Kadushi Cliffs, which was another one. He said, when you go to these places, don't talk to anyone, just look around and observe. It was very dangerous, so a police officer went with them because these certain areas were owned and operated by different mafias. So yeah, obviously not somewhere they would want to go alone. First place they went was a junkyard, and they went into one of the shacks, and her father said the first thing that stood out to him the most was the fact that there was a container of Tic Tacs lying on the bed. Amy absolutely loved Tic Tacs, so his first thought was, what if Amy was here? What if they took her off the ship and brought her here? Her brother said that they were driving down this pretty long road, and as they were passing a car, he heard a voice that sounded just like Amy's coming from that specific car as they passed yell out, "Brad." He freaked out and spun around and began following them, and by the time the driver pulled over, they got a look in there and they seen that she was not in there. It was just an elderly man by himself. But he still believes that he did hear her. So what if she was outside from another direction, and when she said his name, he accidentally thought it was coming from that car that passed him. They searched everywhere and literally could not find her. But they knew she was out there. They knew. Now there was two witnesses saying that they've actually seen her and described her clothing and everything. Her family was not giving up. The family contacted America's Most Wanted because they wanted to get her face out there more. By December 5th, which was now 9 months after her disappearance, a man who was watching his TV had seen Amy come on as a missing woman. And going back to August of 1998, he remembered that he did see her. He said that the tattoos and the piercings were all the same and that he was 100% sure that this was the same woman that he seen when he was there. He spoke to the FBI and went into great detail about his sightings and the people that were with her at the time as well. One of the two men that were with her, he just stared at him, and he explained that he was a big man and had a very distinctive face to him. He stated that the man he seen, he knew that it was Alistair Douglas, who was that band leader from the cruise. Amy was explained to be very strong and super athletic. So if someone did take her off the ship, she definitely put up a fight. There was no way in hell someone was just going to take her off the ship with ease. In my opinion, and just like one of her friends stated, she thinks someone may have possibly put something in her drink, and maybe that's why she was complaining about not really feeling well to her brother that night. And then they may have put her in a suitcase and just walked off the ship with her because, again, she was pretty tiny, which is why the crew staff, again, should have did their job and listened to her family. They chose to let everyone off of that ship knowing that there was a missing woman, and they most likely played a big part in her disappearance because of them not listening and taking it seriously from the beginning. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like the crew staff was honestly more worried about money in this situation than actually finding Amy. They just kept repeating that 2,400 other people spent money on this vacation, which is just sickening to me because let it have been one of their family members. It would have been completely different. They would have taken it more serious if it was one of their own. Someone by the name of Bill Hefner was in the Navy for 20 years, and his ship had pulled into Curacao, and they were there for the night. He stopped in a bar that he honestly was not supposed to be in, and he explained it as looking like a hotel from the top and then a bar at the bottom. When he went in there, the first thing he noticed was two guys and two girls coming down the stairs, and both men had guns. So obviously, already a bad sighting. I can understand why he was not supposed to be in this bar. When he went in there, he sat down with the two girls, and the guys had went over to the bar. He said one of the girls got up and left to walk over towards the bar, and then that's when the other girl told him, "Hey, they're holding me against my will. I need help." She said she owes them $200 and she can't get her freedom. This was his 18th year in the Navy, and he's heard plenty of stories from working girls, so he didn't think much of it besides her trying to get some money from him. But he does remember that she told him in a southern accent, "My name is Amy Bradley." And she told him she got off the ship on her own to score drugs, and now she's stuck there with them. When the other lady came back, she got silent again. He didn't know who Amy was at this point or that she was missing. And there was multiple different men there with guns. So he got up and he left. He said, this shit is sketchy. He said it was not until 2001 that he seen the missing persons report and remembered her face from that night. So at this point, it couldn't be confirmed because it was years later, which this part really sucks because if only he would have knew who she was at that specific time or that she was missing, he could have gotten her some help. And I know he probably feels very guilty now, which it's not his fault. He did not know. He didn't report it at the time as well because he didn't want to get reported or busted at the ship. He didn't want them knowing he went to an illegal bar. He said he's very certain that this was Amy Bradley, and the detectives even put him through interrogation and lie detector tests as well and showed him pictures. They showed him the man named Yellow, and he couldn't be sure to remember much of the suspects because most of his interactions was with who is suspected to be Amy. Brad and the rest of Amy's family was just confused on why she would leave the ship for drugs in the first place. And how would she even get to a point where she owes someone money? This was not like Amy. They were just thinking, how did she get there? What happened? And how did it even happen? Or did they miss any details on the cruise ship? So many questions were going through their heads at this point. So then they started thinking back, and Brad just couldn't shake the fact that he remembered that the waiter that night was very obsessed with Amy. And then Amy's mom remembered the waiter coming up to her and asking, "Where's Amy? We want to take her to Carlos and Charlie's," which was a bar. And she remembered Amy telling her, "No way, I'm not getting off of this boat."
She remembered that on multiple occasions, she'd seen someone continuously staring at them. And she even gave the gesture of, like, what do you want? And when she looked down to get her stuff and then looked back up, he was gone. She told Amy, let's go get our pictures. When you go to on like a roller coaster ride and they take your picture and you have the chance to go up there and purchase, it's something similar to that. So there was that area to get the pictures from the cruise that was hanging on the gallery. And when they went to go buy them, there was none of her. And even the staff member stated that he remembered there being one of them. So this left her mother asking a few more questions now, looking back after the disappearance. One was, who was that staring? Number 2, why were they trying to get her off of the ship to that bar before? And number 3, why were Amy's photos missing? In her mother's words, someone saw her, they wanted her, and then they took her. May of 2001, which was now 3 years since Amy went missing, Michael Clark, who was a special agent in charge with the FBI, had taken over the case. He explained that you could hear the pain and desperation in the Bradleys' voices for answers. Anytime they heard a ding or anything come from the computer, they would run for it. Some of them were about torture. Some of the heartbreaking stuff that was sent to them was Amy's feet were cut with razor blades so she couldn't escape. Amy is being tied to a tree and she was struck on the head with something and was buried in Venezuela and gave coordinates. But when they looked those coordinates up, they did not exist. This was just so sick to do to a family that is literally searching for their missing daughter and sister. One day, they received another email in 2005 that this time included a lot of photos, allegedly from a website that people would meet for sex work. These pictures looked a lot like Amy, and it sent a panic through her family's bodies. They didn't know for sure if this was Amy, so all they could do was just sit and worry and just wonder. It's been 7 whole years, so logically they don't know what she looks like right now. The nose, chin, and hair, it all looked like Amy. This was now a huge lead. And now the FBI needed to take this new piece of evidence very seriously. The FBI had a forensic analysis done on the photo, and they did have several photos of Amy in all different angles from before her disappearance to use. What they do is they measure things that don't change in time. They did measurements with the ear and with the chin. They looked at the shoulder and the arm. And after the forensic analysis looked at the photo, they believed that this was Amy Bradley. This completely tore her family. Her mother said it felt like a stab in the heart. They always knew that she was out there, and now this just confirmed this for them. And they also knew that Amy would have never willingly went and did this. Amy's parents went onto the Dr. Phil show to talk about this new piece of evidence and to tell her story. A woman who had just gotten off of work and was watching a little TV had seen Amy's parents on the show and the picture of Amy. This lady sat and thought to herself, like, there's no way. This picture that was being displayed was the same woman that she had seen in the Barbados. Her and her husband were on a cruise, and when the ship had stopped, she wanted to get some souvenirs for her family. They went downtown to find a store, but didn't really see anything, so they decided to go back to the ship and eat. She needed to use the restroom first, so she went in, and she said she was in there for maybe about 3 or 4 minutes, and all of a sudden, she heard people coming in, and she heard multiple male voices. She could tell that they were in the bathroom, and she couldn't hear everything that they were saying, but she did hear them say, the deal is at 11, and I'm warning you that you better be ready to go. She didn't know what they were talking about. She thought maybe they were talking about drugs. I mean, she only heard them say that. So after that, she heard the men leave, and she opened the door and seen a young woman standing by the sinks. She had long, dark hair that looked very crazy and was wearing a straight skirt and a sleeveless top. She had a look on her face like she had been crying. So she walked over there to the sink and she said hi, asked the lady if she was on vacation, and all she did was shook her head no. So then she asked if she lived here, and again, she shook her head no. So then she was like, okay, well, what's your name? And the lady told her Amy, and you could tell it was a Southern American accent. She then asked where she was from, and she thought she heard her say West Virginia. So she was like, oh, I have a daughter from around there, and her name is Amy as well. Amy then started walking towards her and basically cornered her in a corner. So out of fear and not knowing what the hell was going on, she told her it was so nice to meet you and I hope you have a good time, and kind of walked off. But she said that Amy just stood there and didn't move out of that position. When she opened the door, she seen the men standing right there blocking her exit. She started playing dumb and was like, excuse me, I have to get through. When she finally got out there to her husband, he was like, you know, you were in there for a long time. She told him she felt something was really off in there and she thought they were holding that girl against her will. As Amy and these men walked out, she said they had their arms wrapped around her arms, and she watched them until they just disappeared. She said she couldn't stop thinking about this girl for weeks, and she didn't think there was anything that she could really do. I mean, remember, they're international at this point. There was not much that she could do. She also didn't know who exactly Amy was until she seen her on the news. So then she called the FBI and she told them about the encounter she had with her. She knew it was her. The agents went out and tried to track her, but unfortunately, as we see in a lot of cases, there was no cameras in that area. They then looked at the photos again and tried to point out any piece of fabric or the bed or anything in the picture to find out where this photo was taken. The sad part about stuff like this is that it is extremely hard to find victims of sex trafficking, and then the survivors that get rescued has told law enforcement that their entire family at home would be killed if they said anything or tried to escape. So they really felt like they had to continue obeying these people. One night in April of 2017, which was now 19 years since Amy went missing, a voicemail came in from a woman named Amika Douglas. And get this, she was the daughter of Alistair Douglas, and she was calling because she had information about Amy Bradley. She explained that her dad was all about music and always playing on cruises. So this particular cruise, he came back acting very odd with his wife, which was Amika's mom. It just seemed like everything changed at this point. She did notice a suitcase, bag type of thing, and when she opened it, she seen some pictures. It was all pictures of women, and it was only Caucasian women. That raised red flags for his daughter. She asked him one day what happened to Amy Bradley, and his reaction was very weird. He always seemed to get upset when it was brought up, and she just felt like his story was missing details and didn't make much sense to her. She called him while on camera and asked him about Amy again. They've never solved the case. They've never found her. She is still missing to this day. And her mom and dad are getting older. No answers. This has affected her family so much that Brad has never had kids of his own. He said that he does not want kids because he had to see the pain that his parents felt and what they went through throughout the process of Amy's disappearance. He said he never wanted to experience that or have any kids. How heartbreaking is that? And honestly, it's not uncommon for disappearances and deaths to happen on cruise ships. I mean, look at the death that just happened. I know it was her own family, but look at the murder that just happened on that cruise not too long ago. I'm looking up how many disappearances on cruise ships are there a year. It says around 19 to 200 people go missing from cruise ships annually, with estimates varying, but figures around 200 people per year are often cited for disappearances. There's a reason why I've never been on a cruise ship, and I don't think I ever want to. What do you think happened to her? Where do you think she's at? Do you think she's still alive? Comment your thoughts down below. And don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss a case. Stay safe. I will see you in my next one.